Welcome to Turning Towards the Shadow. Erin Braless. St. Patrick's Day. I'm shooting this the day before St. Patrick's Day. There may be a chance I might not be able to stream, and I want to be able to show something at the scheduled time. And I like to treat Turning Towards the Shadow is about people who may be interested in going into the shadow work. And the suggestion is that, and a phrase we perhaps have been standing on, is that truth is a pathless land, and no man or no organization can bring another man to truth. But we certainly can help each other sharpen the blades of common sense to enter the wilderness or into that area some call the shadow work, the Jungian shadow work. But not necessarily the only way of going into that. But that brings up the idea that no man nor organization can bring another man to truth. Religion. St. Patrick's Day. And now what I'm going to share with you, I received information that I got from another person, and there may be errors in this statement I'm going to share with you. But we'll get there when we get there. You know, St. Patrick's Day in Ireland, there was never one snake in the area of Ireland. They're not indigenous to that land. Constantine, going back to when he was the Roman emperor, he became a Christian. And one of the first things he did was he went out and after he converted not only himself but his empire to Christianity, he went out and he killed all the competing sects of Christianity. The Gnostics and again, I'm just sharing you information. I may be wrong, and I'm not trying to give you factoids. We're sharing information to get to an area of observation and pull it into focus, just for the sake of this type of conversation, dialogue. So, what is said to have happened is that St. Patrick didn't go to Ireland with his flute to get all the slithering snakes out of the country. In fact, it was Constantine who sent St. Patrick's to Ireland to kill all the druids and pantheists. Those who were considered the bearers of knowledge, who were connected to nature, the natural law. Now, perhaps there's factors of that information that are not correct. But you know, I'm not sharing this with you to bash any religion. I don't want to waste time getting into any kind of arguments of debates. If anybody does have a relationship with a religion, a higher power, whatever that is to you, great. Fair enough. This is just a conversation for different people at different stages and perhaps different understandings to get where they have to go regarding shadow work. So I'm not interested in tearing down anybody's belief systems or attacking anybody's belief system. It's just simply about trying to observe the truth as it is. Tomorrow I've worked in my life many years in the bar business in New York City. I've engaged in all types of activities around drinking and the culture, and loved it. It's an aspect of who I am. But there was a time in my life when, well, let me say today I don't drink. I don't take anything that's going to alter my consciousness. And I'm not knocking or condoning anybody who does. I'm simply saying that in my own engagement in what would be the shadow work or my own freement of attachments, I've been free of the imperious urge, or maybe the not necessity, or maybe even I don't want to dull my consciousness. I don't want anything to get in the way of me or having a direct experience in the present moment. The world and the people who seek to control human beings do enough already. Again, that doesn't mean I'm knocking anyone else who can do whatever people feel like they want to do. Have a beer, pray to God, rattle the beads. It's up to you. It's a conversation. But from my own understanding, in the society we live in bread and circuses, there's certainly an aspect of what I just shared with you about St. Patrick's Day that can be observed as a great example of the war on consciousness on many different levels. One may be how Christ consciousness, or the person who was attributed as Jesus Christ, and the religion that was organized around his teachings and principles. There are many different organized religions that are Christian, and well, we know the stories regarding organized religion throughout history. That which binds, religion, religare, to bind. Bread and circuses, and I'm jumping around as I'm speaking to you. It's kind of coming to focus myself. The idea that there is a story told about St. Patrick's Day, and it's being celebrated tomorrow all over the country, and people go and celebrate and imbibe and drink and have fun with friends and family, which is great. But there's an aspect of it that is a numbing of consciousness. One is a numbing of the actual drinking, and another aspect of it being a part of bread and circuses. And the other aspect of it as the initial lie. And then we can go to the idea that there was an organized religion that went to a land and killed all the people who were considered the caretakers of Earth. The Druids and the Arya were supposed to be pure of heart, and those who would take care of the world, of the Creator, of nature. They would not cut a blade of grass. And they were the people who went past, but people who were connected to the skies, the stars, the land. Stonehenge, the people that understand that their astrotheology, the people who were seafarers that understood the connection between the inner of aspect of consciousness and perhaps the outer. So I'm sharing this with you because we're talking about turning towards the shadow, and I think it's just a good understanding and an aspect of understanding our own relationship to religion or to beliefs, because sometimes we don't have the whole story, and there are different factors of how even tomorrow, St. Patrick's Day, where we may have traditions where we enjoy getting together, or even be in businesses. Like I have friends and people that I care about that have families and friends, and a bar business is a big part of them having a family, sending their kids to school, to college, blah blah blah. It's a cultural part of society, but so is bread and circuses, and so is religion. Different types of Christian churches, different types of religion organizations. And so is the use of religion and land as excuses and means to subjugate nature or the consciousness of man. But let me put that aside, and I went along a little bit too far, and get back to the consciousness, what we're talking about, that perhaps that space of freedom that is sought with if someone's entering into what is considered the shadow work. Now, going into the idea of religion, prayer comes to mind. And I know people who have made changes in their lives, and prayer and religion has been a big part of, and it's a big part of their life. When I was kind of going through my own understanding of meditation, or when I was really learning how to observe my reactive self, my attachments. We spoke about Viktor Frankl, impulse-based response. And I was suggesting that freedom is that space between impulse and reaction. When we are able to observe our reaction and not take it, do not take the reaction, and observe that space, and it's no longer becomes a reaction because we have observed it and the need to react has fell away, then we have the freedom of just taking action. And that is that space of freedom that's being suggested on a limited scale, just to going into these areas of just for the sake of conversation. And for myself, I remember, when I first was looking into, I was looking to change some habitual aspects of myself, and this is why I'm sharing this, because it's not only did I identify myself with some of my habitual behaviors, which I just assumed was my inherent state of being. But I didn't realize that it was connected to my identification with our society, which is because we've been kind of cultivated into as part of the consumerist society that we spoke about in some of these past conversations. So when I was struggling with changing, because my habitual, that reactive, those habits I wanted to change were like instant, and I didn't have the space to observe it. It became a very tough struggle. There was a lot of emotional, I guess, stress and disorder. So, and when I was looking to find out how other people were dealing with some of these things, I did come into someone who became a type of kind of a mentor, because he was very much at peace. And one of the things he shared with me was with this idea of God. I've never I've never had an understanding or belief in a personified God. But I assumed it was kind of beyond me. So I kind of had my somewhat of a perspective on it before I kind of came to more of an grounded understanding that I'm kind of standing on and in today. Because I didn't have internal order, and I was living a very habitual reactive. I was living in a state of reaction. My life was a reactive state of being. But I wasn't aware of it. So this guy suggested, he said, you know, before, if you come to this place where you feel yourself in that reactive state of being or that habitual state, he says, why don't you try the St. Francis prayer? I mean, I'm paring down conversations, but this is just for the sake of this, to share this experience. And I said, well, and it was, Lord, may I be an instrument of thy peace. Where there is hatred, may I be love. Where there is error, may I be truth. Where there is discord, may I be harmony. Where there is doubt, may I be faith. Where there is despair, may I be hope. Where there are shadows, may I be light. Where there is sadness, may I be joy. May I seek rather to comfort than to be comforted, to understand than to be understood, to love rather than love. And I'm forgetting the last aspect. May I seek to forgive rather than be forgiven, and in dying seek eternal life. Pardon me, I forgot the last end of it for the moment. The point being was, when he shared that with me, I said, well, you know, I don't believe that you could, and that there is any kind of God or being that's going to take these things away or whatever. He says, well, just think that there's a man that lived like this, that a man placed these things in his life, and he said, and you know what, give it a try. If you come up to these things and you're caught up and you're getting angry or you're getting blah blah, whatever it may be, say it to yourself or say it. Just give it a shot. And I gave it a shot, and I noticed that it eased things. And so why I'm sharing this with you is, over time, and you may find whatever it is that works for you. If you're someone that is maybe dealing with some habit, I've spoke about habit, unhealthy habit, and addiction, and I put even my loose definitions. You can look at it. I'll put it one of the charts in. Because what happens is, if we're, especially in an addiction, people just go, and addictions kind of, I'm not going to go all into this now, but it becomes an aspect of the mind and body that it becomes an imperious urge. But unhealthy habit is, my understanding is when you take the same reactive action over and over at the expense of other options or intuitive options, to the point where it becomes a detriment. And habit is when we do the same thing over and over, but we're closing the door on other options and intuitive aspects of our lives. I'm going on a little bit. But this is the point. When I started doing that, I did have an experience. And really, all I was doing was trusting this other person and something he was sharing with me. So, the experience I had was, I no longer use it now, because I've had the experience where it gave me enough space to observe the habits or reactions I was having, and I didn't have to take it anymore. And so I guess the suggestion is that if it's something that you have a mantra or anything, it may just be the fact that you're replacing maybe negative thought or this reactive self just for the moment, putting in something positive to keep it at bay and giving you a little bit of space to create that space between impulse and response, or impulse space reaction. Because this is a part of the war on consciousness. And this is part, from my understanding, part of the shadow work. And so for me, now, I kind of had my own experience with the St. Francis prayer, and I started saying, may one be a channel of thy peace. Where there is hatred, may one be love. Where there is error, may one be truth. Where there is discord, may one be harmony. As I said before, because for me, it was no longer a personified God, but for me, one is, like the friend that I was sharing earlier said to me, when I told him, I don't really believe in God, he says, well, how about you're not the center of the universe? I said, okay, I can take it easy, but I can accept that. So for me, though, the one is consciousness. So that's a suggestion. If you come upon these things, that's a tool that works, that you can take out of your bag, right? But here we come to religion. So I think what can be dangerous, though, is this, just as sometimes when we're getting rid of, it's just something to be aware of, I think. Religion are forms of accumulated knowledge and belief systems related to it. And it's rote. And again, if this is something that works for you now, fair enough. But the suggestion is that perhaps it's only a step to getting to the other place. Perhaps these are just structures of the mind that one uses for a type of inner security that gets them through. But the suggestion is some, they may no longer, those structures or rituals may no longer do what they used to do. And that's okay, because perhaps it's time to observe what they are and move on. Because the suggestion is that inner freedom is internal order. And you do not need a strategy to be present in the moment. Whether it's organized religion or whatever the organized belief system is, you do not need it to engage with the present moment. And from my understanding, part of the shadow work is that we pare away at all of these type of mechanisms of the mind, of strategies, to really deal with these aspects of ourselves that unfortunately in our society we have compartmentalized, and we have not ever had, we do not have a relationship. In our society, we do not have a healthy relationship with our natural state of being. And sorry, this may offend some, but if I tell you how I understand religion is that my understanding is that consciousness, that which we call consciousness, simply is, and it is a free state of being that is inalienable and immutable. What religion does is it takes that from people and packages it and gives them back in a structured way, in a building, in a form. For me, it's a part of the subjugation of nature. Now, that may just be the organized religion. I do not want to step upon someone's beliefs, and if something that serves you well, perhaps I'm wrong, or perhaps you have a relationship with it that is connected to something that is actual and tangible to consciousness, and that is your experience. But what happens is we rely and we become dependent. We trade our dependencies on formulations of structures of knowledge, such as aspects of religion, and we replace the things that were kind of blocking us with, we trade it up for this new thing, this new formulation, this new type of psychological security. And what I understand the shadow work to be is we are observing that space because we want it to be a space of freedom, not a space of, not to be entrapped, what I would say, I term the bondage of self. And what happens is at time is a habit. And again, I'm not saying, as I said, we're all coming to the table with all this conversation from different places. And my experience is what has been helpful for me, or how I have come to observe things that are false, may be different for you. Your perspective, you may be standing at a different place, right? Your perspective may be different. Your experience, what you bring to the table, I'm not sure. But I'll tell you what I do understand. Consciousness is simply that which is. Freedom. Before the word. Before a word, before the mind of man can even think of the word freedom, or think of the word religion, or think of the word peace, before that process in time of the mind goes into play, consciousness simply is. And all those things I just mentioned are simply aspects of consciousness. And freedom and meditation is when someone can be in that space without any of it and be okay and be able to just stay still. And it doesn't have to be an exercise, a practice to go and sit still silently and try to control the thoughts from not entering your space, because you are in that state of being 24/7. Freedom. But as we understand, we're inundated with the society we live in. I spoke about how consumerism kind of co-ops that aspect of ourselves. J.J. Couey is someone that's been, thank you, Matt Raymer, who has come to my attention, and I saw he shared this quote, and pardon me, I forget who the quote was from, and it says, "Your consciousness is their real estate." Something to think about. But I'll suggest this to you. Just as people who control, people are the levers of control, and those who restrict natural resources, right, as a leverage mechanism, food, water, shelter, see your consciousness as a resource that should be restricted and leveraged against you. But knowing this may be even, I may thinking about it and knowing this will not help one be free of it. And actually, in the past, I would never speak about this unless someone had asked me, because it's for someone else to come upon. But we're at a time in humanity where the war on consciousness has stepped up to a new level. And I'm not going to go into detail of that, but it's time where we have to help each other come to this however we can. Because freedom cannot exist in the world until people become free within. And for people to start engaging in stuff like the shadow work, the suggestion is, from my perspective, a problem of thought cannot be fixed with thought. And the shadow work is not an equation to be figured out. It is a natural experience of observation. And I don't want to go further into, and however it is one will go into that. I like the Krishnamurti, and I'm sure other people have said it was, upon seeing the falseness of the false, truth appears. That which we call truth emerges, because it is simply there. And so what the suggestion is, what religion is, the restriction of natural resources then is your consciousness. And they create a whole organized structure that they're going to make someone an authority of consciousness. And you're going to have to jump through hoops and rattle the beads and whatever it may do to get you back to the place that was yours to begin with. And now I'm giving you how I see it. And again, maybe I'm wrong. And whatever works for you, great. What I'm suggesting is that truth is a path to land, and no man can bring another man to truth, and neither can an religious organization or any organization. But we certainly can help each other sharpen the blades of consciousness. And the suggestion is, I think the key to taking those steps to actual freedom is to be willing to put all of our beliefs on the table. Every aspect, every single belief, tradition we have put on the table, and not say they're right or wrong, but to give it an honest appraisal. We have to be willing to say, this thing that I may understand to be so may no longer be so. Or perhaps I didn't understand it to be so. Or perhaps there's an aspect of it that is unnecessary. Or perhaps it's a tool in which my culture I have identified with, and it has been an aspect of people restricting natural resources in order to use it as leverage, but I have identified it with my society and my relationship to it. It goes with religion, it goes with political organizations, it goes with different traditions. So, yeah, you have to pardon me. This is a little bit muddled. I'm shooting this on the fly as I walk because just in case I don't get to stream tomorrow. So, okay, good luck.